wanted to be a writer?
Wow. I think I was around 8 years old. And I have to give you a little bit of context as well. I was born and raised in Hong Kong, which at that time was a British colony. And there was very little opportunities for young kids like myself who were artistically bent. But anyway, I'll get back to that in a bit. The 8-year-old me loved journaling, and so I had a little exercise book and I had pencils which I could sharpen myself, and I would write little stories. A half a page was usually what the story was, the length of the story, or a longer story or a full story would be 1 page. So it was very simple things, like I saw an old man crossing the street, and then there was a dog, and he had to rescue the dog from the traffic, but he made it across to the other side, hooray, with an exclamation mark, and stories like that. And then I knew then there was so much freedom in writing, there was so much I could explore, and ever since then I've kept a journal, even to today. So yeah, I would say that was probably, I didn't know at that time because I was just a kid, but looking back, it seemed to me that that was when something was working to say this is what I want to do.
Please tell us about your first stage production and the name of that production.
I can't remember the name. You mean directed by me?
Written.
No, written. Oh, written. Yes, the first stage production was based on an adaptation of The Hobbit. And that was in Toronto. Susan, can't remember her name, commissioned me and gave me the princely sum of $750 to write a 1-hour adaptation, which could then be performed by touring actors to schools in the in the Toronto district. So that was my first gig, I think, and she still owes me the $750.
We'll get after her. How many stage productions have you written?
I've had 14 plays produced in different theaters, or sometimes the same theater, over the years. Yeah, 14. There's one I have he's waiting in line and looking for a home. So if you know of anybody who wants,
tell us now. What's the name of it?
It's called El Camino, and it's about a man in his middle ages trying to find himself, and he goes on this walk to the Camino, and halfway through he meets his 14-year-old self, and they have this conversation about expectations, disappointments, what it is to be a human and to be a man about things, and with a nice surprise ending.
Do you hear that, world? El Camino. What steps did you take to get your plays produced?
Do you mean how did they get to the stage? A lot of them were commissioned pieces. In other words, somebody would say, have you got an idea for a play? And I would give them a précis of it, or treatment of it, and then they'd either say, yes, okay, we'll go for this, and here's a schedule, etc. Other times I would have to bring the play to an artistic director and say, I think your theater would really be a great home for this piece. Could you please read it and see what you think? And in a lot of cases I've been very fortunate that people have responded well to them. Yeah.
What does it feel like, or what is it like to see your words and ideas come alive on stage?
Yeah, it's terrifying on one level and exciting on another level and intimidating on a third. But the most, the best I can say is that when I'm sitting in the audience watching my own play, I think it's written by someone else. It doesn't immediately connect with me that it was something I wrote. someone else must have written that play, because you got to remember that when the play is first either handed in its final form to the time it comes on stage, there might be a lapse of 2 years in which you might have forgotten quite a lot of stuff. But it's always a thrill to just to have that buzz of, my goodness, who wrote this play? And that sometimes zings you into unfortunate directions, which is, oh, that scene, my goodness, who wrote that scene? Or something very happy that I would be able to remember and use again.
When and how did you transition to radio plays, movies, screenplays, television?
Well, it was all pretty much at the same time. My early career, I had to do 5 projects a year to pay all the bills. And so that was split usually with a couple of directing gigs, maybe one of my plays in development or in its final form, and thirdly something on CBC radio drama or in television. So whatever came first, I would have to cobble together my own year, because I was a gig worker. I went from job to job. And usually that, I don't know, the grâce de Dieu, it fell into place like that for years until I started running theaters myself.
Where does your inspiration come from?
For writing, I would imagine it's daydreaming for hours, looking out a window until some good stuff comes, and then you write it down. So I can't say where it comes from. I know most recently in my novels it has come from thinking about my family and the various generations that were working in the Southeast Asia during that period of time, during the 19th and 20th centuries. So they were the inspiration for those works. For directing, it really depends on the show. It depends on who wrote the play. So most of my directing has not been of my own work. It has been of other people's work. Happily, we were doing a lot in my career. I did a lot of Canadian work, so you could always call up the writer and talk to the writer about their work and what they want to see and how they've approached it, so that you can interpret it for the stage. So that's really, in a nutshell, that's kind of how I approach things.
Well, how did your writing lead you to directing, or does this have to go dovetail with your education?
All of it dovetails with education. I never thought of being a director. I've always thought I was going to be an actor and a writer first if I could make enough money, keeping body and soul together. So when I finished university, at university, that's McMaster University in Hamilton, they were an incredible, studio, if you like, of creative things, particularly in the theater. And after I ended there, I went to New York, and I didn't have very much money, so all I could afford was to live at the 92nd Street Y, and go to the studios, different studios in New York, to learn about acting. And many of the studios had a fee-paying group of actors and a non-fee-paying group of actors. So I was in the non-fee-paying group of actors. You could sit and watch and listen, but you couldn't participate in any way. So that's how the acting thing started. And I came back to Canada because I didn't have a work visa. I was kicked out of the country and came to Canada, where I did have a citizenship. And when I came back to Canada, essentially I wanted to be an actor. So I auditioned, and luckily enough, I look back now. The artistic director at the time there, Leon Major, said, "I'm looking for an assistant director. Would you like to come and talk to me about it?" So I did, and then eventually I got the job there, and I was there for about 5 years. So it started to cross-pollinate, and I mentioned before that I wrote an adaptation of The Hobbit, and that came because I was an assistant to the director. So I learned a little bit of my craft from him and from other directors who were vastly more experienced than I was. And I was just a kid trying to do whatever anybody wanted in order to learn what I needed to learn to go out on my own.
How would you explain your style of directing?
Oh, good grief. That would be very interesting to ask different actors what that was, or different stage managers and designers and so on. I think there are some plays that need to come together very quickly for expediency's sake, not necessarily for artistic reasons. So in the summer in Ontario, there were a lot of summer stock theaters, and you would have 5 days of rehearsal, and then you would go on for 3 weeks. So really, we're still working on the play. And in those 5 days, the best you can hope for is to block it, to stage it, to have people move around so they don't crash into each other. And there's very little analysis of the text, very little trial and error, very little, playing with the words or any of that kind of subtlety that you might have in a longer rehearsal. So if it's a longer rehearsal, then I would boil it down to say, as a director, you have to make sure that the actors feel confident, that they are the focus of the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks of a run. And if they're not confident and happy about where they are in the development of the character, then you've got nothing. So my job, I see as a director, is to open up those opportunities for them to get comfortable with the play and with the character. And as soon as we've got that, then we can do all sorts of other things. So it's not a question of sit here, stand there, light a cigarette. It's about intention. It's about not choosing the first intention in mind. Let's think about it a little further, and let's feel our way together into this. So that's how I approach it.
What theaters across Canada have you directed in?
Oh,
Or how many?
How many? I think I've directed about 200 productions in various places. So that would be in Toronto, it would be the Toronto Arts Centre, which is now called Centre Stage, where I started my work at Berkeley Street, Passmarais. No, I didn't direct a play at Passmarais, just workshops. Factory Theatre, the Banff Centre in the Music Theatre Division, and the Stratford Festival in Ontario, where I was an assistant director. But they do it on a repertory basis, so the assistant director is to get to do a lot of that stuff. And that was very exciting. And of course, at the Gateway Theatre and two other theatres that I ran during the period of my career. Yeah.
Let's expand on running theaters. You've been at the artistic and executive director at what theaters?
I was in only one, which is the Gateway Theatre. The other two theatres I ran, the Press Theatre in St. Catharines, I was the artistic director, and there was a general manager. They were very good and very kind, very supportive. But it was a small budget. But anyway, 7-8 years there, I felt that I had to move on to something else. And there were, in Ontario, a whole bunch of summer theatres that do very good work for the months between May and September or October. So I ran the Lighthouse Festival Theatre at that time as an artistic director, but as soon as I got the job, the general manager left. So I had to pick up the pieces, and although I didn't have the title, it worked out that it was executive directed duties. In other words, the physical plant, the marketing, the whatever it is, and not just the directing and choosing of plays. And then I learned from those two experiences, and I thought, the next gig I get, I'll have to combine it so that real change can happen in an organization. So when the Gateway Theatre gig came, I said, we have to think about what this position is and who's running it and why. So after a lot of discussion, we agreed that yes, I would hold both positions and make way for a general manager to come up behind me. And that's what essentially we did.
Please tell me what writing means to you.
I can't live without it, so it's a labor of love, I guess. You can't live with something or someone, you can't live without them, then that's first and foremost. I think I love doing what I do, and I like seeing rough ideas polished until it's something that I can believe in. That's the second thing. And then the third thing is finding, if it's a play, the right interpreters for that play. So I like working with other directors, and I take a back seat. I don't presume that I know better than the director who is selected to direct the play, and let them do their thing and be a resource. So I like that collegiality. I like seeing my ideas come out on the page and invariably watch it develop, because the original idea would not be as good as an idea that is eventually developed and has some traction.
How do you write? And by that I mean, how are you inspired? Do you write every day? Do you use a voice recorder? Do you longhand?
The fewer electronics, the better. So I write longhand and every day. And it doesn't matter. It's an old habit of journaling. So even if it's a half a page, I will write that down. Even if I have absolutely nothing to say, I will write down that I met Susan and Gabby and Paul, and they had cameras and I did none. I wish I had a camera. Something, anything. So I would do that every day as a discipline. If I'm working on a project, then it's very disciplined. It is definitely 9:30 or 10 o'clock through to 2 o'clock or 2:30, and then that's the end of that. And the next day I review what I've done in the day previous, and so on and so on. Excuse me, I've got 4 days to live.
We're cutting that part out. Okay. I don't know if we can answer this question, but what changed you from a playwright to a novelist and author? Yes.
The novels that I have written recently, House of Wives and House of Daughters, the sequel, both began as plays. So I was invited to be a playwright in residence at Stratford, and there you do nothing but write. And then if you want to share your work, you have a circle, and then you share your work with people, and they share it with you. So I was writing House of Wives, which I thought was going to be a play, a kind of a large, epic play, but it would be done by 5 people, and one of them would be me, as a narrator, and then playing, say, 10 roles, whereas the protagonist and the antagonist would be played by one person. That would be my great-grandparents. And So as I was writing it, it became larger and larger, and the details that I needed started to grow, because we were talking about the opium trade in the 19th century in an exotic British colony called Hong Kong, and how that all developed. So at the end of the residency, they said, do you have anything for us to read? And I said, yes, here it is. And what I had was really a novel. It didn't have the structure or the weight of a play. It had the structure and the weight of a novel. And they said, what do you want to do with it? And I said, well, I want to go away now and write the novel. So that's how those things developed.
How many books have you written?
I've written 4 books and a whole bunch of pamphlets. So my first novel was called Lion Dance, and it came out in the 1980s, wasn't it, or something like that. And I just looked at it yesterday in preparation for this, and it's awful. It's painful and awful and terrible. But somebody, bless her heart and walls, said, we will invest in this because this is your career. And she published it, and I think it sold like 4 copies or something. No, it did a little bit better than that. But I looked at it and I thought, no, this was awful. Anyway, so I put that away and never referred to it again. I wrote a children's book, A Song for Harmonica, which is a coloring book, and about 25 pages or something. And then there was a long gap of writing plays and screenplays and so on, and then the novels at the end of it. Is that your question, or did I take it somewhere else?
So what's next?
What's next? I'm finishing a screenplay, which was a bad writing day for me today, so I will talk about it. And after that, maybe I might have one more novel in me. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Do you have a favorite play that you wrote?
No, I can't talk about favorite plays. They're all. I won't put a play out there unless I'm happy with it. So I'm happy with all the plays that have either been published or had productions done to them. So they're like my children. Am I going to really choose and say, this child is my favorite? This is not. Can you imagine the years on the couch that this one have to suffer? So I can't say that. I like them all for different reasons. I'm proud of the work, and the fact that they had some exposure and did well.
Do you have any advice for any upcoming writer, playwright, director, author?
Yeah, sure. It's don't give up. It's a tough industry to be a part of, regardless of whether you're George Clooney or you are some schmo. And but it's worth it. It's worth every moment of it. And you're not going to go from this earth saying, I wish I had tried that. Because if you do, you will be rewarded. Don't have too many expectations. Have ambition, but not expectations. And throw yourself into it. And have some fun. Enjoy it. Really, really, if you don't enjoy it, it's not worth doing. Because it makes up for everything else.
Do you have plans of ever directing again and maybe even going back to acting?
In my fantasy, yeah. Directing is a very tiring job. It's you really have to be part teacher, critic, psychologist, philosopher, counselor, all of those things, if you're doing it properly. takes a lot out of you. So I don't think I'll be doing that. Whereas as a writer, I can spend 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 6, take a week off because it's all too much. And that's an easier thing for me physically to do now that I'm so ancient.
How about acting?
We're always acting, aren't we? We're all acting.
All
Isn't
right.
that what Marlon Brando said?
That's about it, man. All acting. All acting, and what can I tell you? Just talk to Azina here, and whack him for you. Okay. That's it. Okay.